The chamber was built to terrify. Ambassador Victor Nash understood. This the moment he stepped through the towering obsidian doors and felt the weight of 1,000 alien gazes pressing down upon him. The grand tribunal hall of the Galactic Dominion stretched before him like a cathedral carved from living darkness, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins that cast everything in shades of deep purple and blood red. Floating platforms rose in spiraling tiers around a central pit, where humanity's delegation now stood. On each platform, representatives of the galaxy's ruling species watched with expressions ranging from contempt to predatory curiosity. Some had too many eyes. Others had none at all. A few existed as clouds of sentient gas contained within shimmering force fields. All of them had one thing in common. They had already decided humanity's fate. Victor walked forward with steady steps, his two companions following close behind. Admiral Helena Cross wore her dress uniform like armor, her silver hair pulled back tight, her face revealing nothing. Dr. Samuel Bright clutched a data tablet against his chest, his brilliant mind working frantically behind calm eyes. Above them, seated on a throne of crystallized starlight, the High Chancellor of the Galactic Dominion looked down with 6 eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. High Chancellor Morthic was ancient beyond human comprehension. His species had ruled the stars when humanity's ancestors were still learning to walk upright. His body was a mass of writhing tentacles covered in metallic scales, each tentacle ending in a cluster of sensory organs that tracked every movement the humans made. "The creatures from the Sol system will kneel," Morthic commanded. His voice did not travel through air. It simply appeared inside their skulls, a violation that made Victor's teeth ache. Victor remained standing. The silence that followed stretched like a blade being drawn from its sheath. On the platforms around them, alien representatives shifted in shock. No species had ever refused to kneel before the High Chancellor. Not in the 12,000 years since the Dominion had united the galaxy under its rule. "Ambassador Nash," Morthic continued, his telepathic voice dripping with cold amusement, "you have been summoned to answer for crimes against Dominion law. Your species has constructed military vessels without authorization. You have developed propulsion technology that bypasses our transit networks. And you have established colonies on 43 worlds that belong to the Dominion by right of conquest." Victor let the accusations hang in the air before responding. "High Chancellor, I must respectfully correct you on one point. Those worlds do not belong to the Dominion. They belong to no one. We colonized them because they were empty." A ripple of outrage passed through the assembly. On a platform to Victor's left, a massive insectoid creature named Commander Draven clicked his mandibles in fury. He led the Dominion's military forces and had personally overseen the conquest of 100 species. "Empty or not, all unclaimed territory is property of the Dominion," Draven hissed. "This is the law that has governed our galaxy for millennia. Your ignorance does not excuse your violations." "We are not ignorant of your laws, Commander." Victor's voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. "We simply reject them." The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in languages that had no human equivalent. Several reached for weapons before remembering that violence in the tribunal hall was punishable by species-wide extinction. Commander Draven's wings buzzed with barely contained rage. Through it all, High Chancellor Morthic remained perfectly still, his 6 eyes fixed on Victor with an intensity that could have melted steel. "You reject them," Morthic repeated when the chaos subsided. "A species that has existed for the blink of an eye rejects laws that predate your world's formation. Explain your reasoning, Ambassador." "I find myself curious." Victor had prepared for this moment his entire life. His father had been part of the team that first detected Dominion signals. His mother had died in the initial contact incident, when a Dominion patrol had vaporized a human research station without warning or explanation. He had spent 40 years working toward this single conversation. High Chancellor, the Dominion operates on a simple principle. Might makes right. You conquered species because you could. You established laws because no one could stop you. You demand obedience because resistance has always meant annihilation. He paused, letting his words settle. Humanity has a different principle. We believe that right makes might. That justice is not determined by who has the bigger fleet. That every species, no matter how young or small, has the right to determine its own destiny. Commander Draven laughed, a horrible clicking sound. Philosophy will not protect you when our warships reduce your planet to ash. You have 12 vessels. We have 12 million. Your defiance is not courage. It is suicide, perhaps. Victor reached into his uniform and withdrew a small device. Or perhaps you have made assumptions about humanity that are about to prove incorrect. He pressed a button. Every light in the chamber flickered. Every sensor screamed warnings. Through the transparent sections of the ceiling, the assembled delegates watched as something impossible happened. 100 human warships materialized around the tribunal station. They had not come through the Dominion's transit gates. They had not been detected on approach. They had simply appeared, as if distance itself had become meaningless. And then, just as suddenly, they vanished again. The silence that followed was absolute. That was the Horizon Drive, Victor said into the stunned quiet. Humanity developed it 18 months ago. It allows any vessel to travel instantly between any 2 points in the universe. No gates required. No detection possible. No defense effective. High Chancellor Morthic's tentacles had gone perfectly still. You could have destroyed this station, he said slowly. You could have killed every leader of the Dominion in a single strike. Yes, Victor met those 6 ancient eyes without flinching. But that is not why we came here. We came to deliver a message. He pulled a sealed document from his uniform. Real paper, printed with real ink, bearing the official seal of the United Earth Government. The human species, recognizing the Galactic Dominion as a hostile power that has repeatedly violated our sovereignty, hereby formally declares a state of war. Commander Draven surged forward. You dare threaten the Dominion with 100 ships? We will crush you within the hour. You could try. Admiral Helena Cross spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the weight of command. But those 100 ships can appear anywhere in the galaxy instantaneously. Your homeworld, your shipyards, your fuel depots. We do not need to fight your fleets. We simply need to ensure that fighting us costs more than you can afford to pay. Victor tucked the document away and straightened his uniform. High Chancellor Morthic, humanity does not want war. We want recognition. We want our colonies acknowledged as sovereign territory. We want a seat at this council as equals, not as subjects. Grant us these things, and we will share our technology with the entire Dominion. Every species will have access to the Horizon Drive, free travel, free trade, free existence. He turned toward the exit. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, we will assume your silence is an answer. The obsidian doors opened before him. Victor walked through without looking back, his heart pounding, his hands steady. Behind him, for the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Dominion did not know what to do. And watching from the shadows of the highest platform, an entity that had existed before the Dominion, before the stars themselves, allowed itself the faintest hint of interest. The humans were finally ready. The test could begin. The human shuttle had barely cleared the station's docking bay when Admiral Helena Cross received the transmission that turned everything upside down. Admiral, this is Earth Command. Priority 1 alert. The voice belonged to General Marcus Webb, and it carried the tone of controlled panic that veterans learned to recognize. The Dominion did not wait for our deadline. Commander Draven launched his personal battle fleet the moment you entered the Tribunal Hall. 200 warships. They are using an accelerated transit route we did not know existed. They will reach Earth in 9 hours. Victor Nash felt the blood drain from his face. Their entire strategy depended on the Dominion hesitating, calculating, debating. Draven had gambled everything on a decapitation strike, betting that destroying Earth would end the human threat before it could spread. He was probably right. Can we intercept? Victor asked, though he already knew the answer. Helena shook her head slowly. Our Horizon drive ships are fast, but they are not designed for sustained combat. Against 200 Dominion warships, we would last minutes at best. Dr. Samuel Bright was already pulling up tactical data, his fingers flying across his tablet. Draven is using a standard extermination formation. Dreadnoughts in front to absorb fire, carriers in the middle to deploy fighter swarms, destroyers on the flanks to prevent escape. He has done this dozens of times. He knows exactly how to eliminate a planet. The shuttle fell into grim silence. Through the viewport, the T. Ribunal Station receded into the star-flecked darkness, its crystalline spires catching light from distant suns. Behind them, 1,000 alien species continued their shocked deliberations. Ahead of them, death approached at speeds that bent the laws of physics. Then reality itself seemed to crack open. A tear appeared directly in front of their shuttle. Not a portal, not a gate, but an actual wound in the fabric of existence that blazed with light so ancient it hurt to perceive. Through its impossible edges, something began to emerge. The shape defied description. It was angular and curved simultaneously. It was solid and liquid and gas and something that had no name in any language. It pulsed with energies that should not have existed, constructed from materials that violated every law of physics humanity had ever discovered. Every system on the shuttle died. Lights failed. Engines stopped. Life support flickered into silence. They floated helplessly in the darkness, watching the impossible vessel complete its emergence from nothing. A voice spoke. It did not use sound waves or telepathy or any technology the humans understood. It simply existed in their minds, as natural as their own thoughts, as ancient as the first star. Do not be afraid. We have been waiting for you. Victor found his voice somehow. Who are you? We built the transit gates your galaxy depends upon. We established the framework that became the Dominion. We left this region of space 11,000 years ago because we believed our work was complete. We were wrong. The shuttle dissolved around them. One moment they were floating in a metal shell, and the next they stood in something that resembled a garden. Crystalline trees stretched toward a sky that changed colors with every breath. Streams of liquid light flowed between structures that sang with mathematical precision. We are what your species calls the architects, the voice continued. We seeded 1,000 galaxies with the tools for civilization. We created the gates because we wanted to connect isolated worlds. We hoped that connection would breed cooperation, that cooperation would breed progress, that progress would eventually produce species capable of surpassing us. Images flooded their minds. Civilizations rising with architect technology, using the gates to expand, to trade, to grow. Then stagnation. Species that never developed their own innovations because borrowed tools were easier. Empires that controlled the gates and used that control to dominate. The slow decay of potential across 10,000 years. The Dominion was our greatest failure. We gave them gifts they never earned. They used those gifts to enslave rather than uplift. They created laws that preserved their power rather than encouraged growth. They turned our dream of connection into a nightmare of control. Admiral Cross stepped forward, her military bearing restored despite the impossible surroundings. "Why are you telling us this?" "What do you want?" "We want to give you our place." The words echoed through the garden with weight that pressed against their souls. Every species that received our technology became dependent on it. They never learned to innovate because innovation was unnecessary. They never questioned our assumptions because questioning was difficult. For 11,000 years, we searched for an exception, for a species that would look at our gifts and ask not, "How do I use this?" but "How do I build something better?" The garden shifted, showing them Earth's history. Early humans mastering fire without guidance. Mathematicians deriving principles that matched architect knowledge independently. Scientists discovering faster-than-light travel through pure theoretical work without any alien technology to copy. You developed the Horizon Drive in 18 months. Other species had millions of years and never conceived of anything similar. You did this because you had no choice, because you were too young to know what was impossible, because you refused to accept limits that you had not tested yourselves. Dr. Bright's scientific mind was racing. The Horizon Drive works on principles completely different from your gates. We assumed the gates were the only way to travel faster than light. That assumption has trapped the galaxy for millennia. You broke it because you never made it. The architect present seemed to smile, though it had no face. This is why we chose you. Not because you are powerful, because you are free. Chose us for what? Victor demanded. Commander Draven's fleet will reach Earth in 9 hours. You have 100 ships designed for exploration, not war. By every calculation, your species will be extinct before your deadline expires. The garden began to fade, replaced by tactical displays showing Draven's fleet advancing through accelerated transit corridors. We will not fight your battles for you. That would defeat the purpose of everything we have worked toward. But we will give you the knowledge you need to fight them yourselves. What you do with that knowledge is your choice. Understanding flooded into their minds. Not weapons, but concepts. The true potential of the Horizon Drive. Methods to turn exploration technology into something far more versatile. Possibilities that human scientists might have discovered in centuries, compressed into seconds of pure insight. The Dominion has ruled through control of the gates for 11,000 years. If humanity falls, that control will continue forever. But if you survive tonight, if you show the galaxy that the Dominion can be challenged, everything changes. The shuttle reformed around them. Systems hummed back to life. Through the viewport, the wound in reality was already closing, the architect vessel folding back into whatever dimension it had come from. One final warning, the voice whispered, growing distant. We are not the only ones watching. Something else has taken interest in your species. Something that has hunted across galaxies for longer than we have existed. By declaring war on the Dominion, you have announced yourselves to the universe. The connection faded. Silence filled the shuttle. Admiral Cross was the first to speak. 9 hours until Draven reaches Earth. We have new knowledge we have never tested. And according to ancient godlike beings, something worse than the Dominion might be coming. She laughed bitterly. Any suggestions? Victor stared at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, 200 warships raced toward his homeworld. Somewhere else, 1,000 species waited to see what would happen. And somewhere beyond imagination, something terrible had noticed humanity's existence. Yes, he said slowly. We are going to save Earth, and then we are going to change everything. The shuttle's engines roared to life, carrying them toward the battle that would determine whether humanity had a future at all. Commander Draven stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Extinction Protocol, watching Earth grow larger on his tactical displays. The blue planet hung against the velvet darkness of space like a fragile ornament, completely unaware that its final hours had begun. 200 warships followed in perfect formation behind him. Each vessel was a kilometer of armored death, bristling with weapons that had burned 100 worlds to ash. His crews were veterans of extermination campaigns that had lasted centuries. They knew their work. They did it well. This would be over quickly. "Status report," Draven commanded, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. "All weapon systems charged and ready. Human orbital stations are evacuating. No defensive response detected." His tactical officer paused, antennae twitching with confusion. "Commander, their behavior is strange. They are not running. They are simply ... waiting." Draven made the clicking sound his species used for laughter. "They have accepted their fate. Primitive creatures often do when faced with inevitable death. Begin the approach to bombardment range. I want their world burning within the hour." The fleet advanced. 200 predators, closing on helpless prey. Then the sensors went insane. "Commander, energy signatures appearing throughout the system. Human vessels using their drive technology." The tactical officer's voice climbed toward panic. 98 contacts. They are everywhere." Draven leaned forward. "Only 98. We outnumber them 2 to 1. They cannot possibly." The first human ship vanished. It simply ceased to exist in one location and appeared in another, materializing less than 50 meters from the Dominion cruiser Relentless. Before any gunner could react, the human vessel fired a single concentrated beam directly into the Relentless's engine core. The explosion consumed 3 nearby ships. The human vessel vanished again before the debris finished spreading. "Evasive patterns," Draven roared. "All ships defensive formation." But the humans were not attacking in any pattern his computers could predict. They appeared and disappeared at random, striking from impossible angles, never existing in one location long enough to be targeted. The Horizon Drive did not just move them. It made them ghosts. On the bridge of the human flagship Eternal Vigilance, Captain Nikolai Petrov watched his tactical display with fierce concentration. The architect knowledge burning in his mind showed him possibilities he had never imagined. The Horizon Drive was not just transportation. It was transformation. With the right adjustments, it could do things that violated every law of warfare the Dominion had ever known. Squadron Gamma, target their carrier group. Squadron Delta, disable their flagship's weapons array. All other units maintain harassment protocols. Human ships flickered through space like thoughts through a dreaming mind. They appeared behind enemy vessels and fired into unshielded engine sections. They materialized inside defensive formations and released concentrated bursts before vanishing. They struck and vanished and struck again. A swarm of phantoms that could not be caught. Commander Draven watched in growing horror as his fleet began to die. "They are too fast," his tactical officer reported, mandibles trembling. "Our targeting systems cannot track them. By the time we calculate their position, they are already somewhere else." Then stop calculating positions. Fill space with fire. Make everywhere dangerous. The order went out. 170 surviving Dominion ships opened fire in all directions simultaneously, creating a sphere of destruction that covered millions of cubic kilometers. Missiles detonated in random patterns. Energy beams crisscrossed empty space. Kinetic rounds turned entire regions into kill zones. The human ships could not jump. Every possible destination was lethally dangerous. For the first time, they were forced to dodge conventionally, and conventional dodging left them vulnerable. The Vigilance took a direct hit. Shields failed. Hull breaches opened across 3 decks. Captain Petrov grabbed his command console as the bridge shook with secondary explosions. Damage report. Shields down. Engine power at 40%. We cannot jump until the next volley should have destroyed them. 12 Dominion ships concentrated their fire on the wounded human flagship. There was no escape, no defense, no possibility of survival. The vigilance dissolved into light. Petrov expected death. Instead, he found himself standing on his bridge, systems humming, damage repaired, the ship hovering safely behind Earth's moon. What happened? His first officer demanded. Unknown, Captain. Our systems did not initiate that jump. Something else relocated us. A pause. We are receiving a transmission. Text only. It says, "You learn quickly. Do not waste what you have been given." Petrov understood. The architects were watching. They were helping, but only enough to give humanity a chance. The actual victory still had to be earned through blood and sacrifice, and the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. Signal all ships. New tactics. When you take critical damage, do not resist. Let the automatic relocation activate. Return to battle as soon as your systems stabilize. The Dominion fleet could not comprehend what was happening. Ships they destroyed kept returning. Vessels they killed reappeared undamaged. It was like fighting reflections. It was like fighting memories. No matter how much firepower they unleashed, the humans simply would not die. Commander Draven watched his numerical advantage evaporate. 200 ships had become 130, then 90, then 60. His ammunition reserves were depleted. His crews were exhausted. His certainty had transformed into something he had never experienced before. Fear. On every communication channel in the solar system. Captain Petrov's voice rang out clear and calm. Commander Draven, your fleet is no longer combat effective. You have lost 140 warships. We have lost none. You are running out of weapons and fuel. We are not. Withdraw now, and we will allow your surviving vessels to retreat. Continue this battle, and you will watch your entire fleet die before you can fire another shot. Pride warred with survival in Draven's mind. He had never retreated. He had never lost. But he had also never faced an enemy that simply refused to stay dead. All ships, he finally commanded, the words tasting like poison. Disengage and withdraw to the nearest transit gate. 60 Dominion warships limped toward the outer system, leaving behind the wreckage of 140 vessels and the shattered remains of Dominion invincibility. On Earth, 9 billion people watched a live broadcast of the battle's conclusion. They had witnessed their defenders perform the impossible. They had seen their species face extinction and refused to accept it. Captain Petrov's voice carried across every channel, reaching every species watching from across the galaxy. This message is for the Galactic Dominion. Humanity has defended its home. We did not want this fight, but we finished it. We remain ready to negotiate. We remain ready to offer partnership. But understand this clearly. We will never again be threatened without consequence. The choice is still yours. Choose wisely. In the tribunal station, High Chancellor Morthic watched the recordings with all 6 of his ancient eyes. For the first time in 12,000 years, a species had defeated the Dominion in open combat. For the first time ever, a younger race had humiliated his most feared commander. The galaxy was about to change, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, something vast and hungry turned its attention toward the small blue world that had just announced itself to the universe. The real war was only beginning. Ambassador Victor Nash returned to the Grand Tribunal Hall 5. Days after the Battle of Earth, the Obsidian. Doors opened with the same ceremonial slowness, but the atmosphere inside had transformed completely. The floating platforms had been rearranged. No longer did they tower above the central pit in judgment. Now they formed concentric circles, placing humanity's delegation at equal height with species that had once looked down upon them. High Chancellor Morthic still occupied his throne of crystallized starlight, but his 6 eyes held something new. Not contempt, not amusement. Uncertainty. 1000 alien. Representatives watched in absolute silence as Victor walked to his platform. Admiral Helena Cross and Dr. Samuel Bright followed, their faces showing the exhaustion of 5 sleepless days. They had spent every hour since the battle preparing for this moment. The fate of humanity would be decided in the next few minutes. Ambassador Nash. Morthic's telepathic voice carried none of its former arrogance. The Dominion has witnessed events without precedent. Commander Draven launched an unauthorized attack against your homeworld. He was defeated by a force 1/4 the size of his own. We have analyzed the battle recordings. We have studied your technology. We still do not fully understand what we observed. Victor nodded carefully. I am willing to explain, High Chancellor. But first, I must understand something. Draven attacked without Dominion authorization. Is this correct? Silence stretched across the chamber. On a platform across from Victor, Commander Draven stood with his wings folded in shame. His surviving ships had returned to Dominion space, and he had been summoned to answer for his catastrophic failure. Morthic hesitated before responding. The attack was not sanctioned by this council. However, many member species privately supported it. They believed destroying humanity before your technology spread was the wisest course of action. I appreciate your honesty. Victor reached into his uniform and pulled out a small crystal that glowed with inner light. This crystal contains complete specifications for the Horizon Drive, every equation, every engineering principle, every piece of knowledge we used to defeat Draven's fleet. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. I am going to give this technology to every species represented in this chamber, free of charge. No conditions attached. The murmurs became shouts. Representatives rose from their platforms, demanding explanation. Commander Draven lunged forward before security forces restrained him. High Chancellor Morthic's tentacles writhed with visible confusion. You would give away your primary military advantage? The technology that makes you untouchable? It was never meant to be a military advantage. Victor held the crystal high, so its light reached every corner of the vast chamber. The Horizon Drive was developed by a scientist named Dr. Eleanor Grant. She worked in a basement laboratory with equipment held together by determination and hope. She died believing she had failed. 3 weeks before her colleagues proved she had changed everything, his voice softened. She did not develop the Horizon Drive to give humanity power over other species. She developed it because she refused to believe that the universe had limits we could not overcome. And we are sharing it freely because we believe the galaxy deserves the same freedom she fought for. Admiral Cross stepped forward, her voice carrying military precision. Once every species has the Horizon Drive, the transit gates become optional. No more tolls. No more controlled routes. No more artificial limitations on travel and trade. Your civilizations will finally be able to grow without invisible chains. And humanity gains nothing from this generosity? The question came from Counselor Thesara, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns. She had watched the proceedings with growing curiosity. We gain allies instead of enemies, Victor replied. Partners instead of subjects. A galaxy of species who chose to work with us rather than beings forced to serve us. We could rule through fear. We have that power now. But ruling through fear creates resentment. Resentment creates rebellion. Rebellion creates war. We have had enough war. High Chancellor Morthic's tentacles slowly stilled. The Dominion will deliberate on your proposal. There is something else you should know before you do. Dr. Bright stepped forward, his face pale with information he had carried for 5 days. During the Battle of Earth, our systems detected something unusual. The Horizon Drive created unexpected energy signatures. Those signatures were detected by something outside this galaxy. Every being in the chamber fell silent. We have confirmed that a response signal originated from coordinates approximately 3 million light-years distant. Something received our transmission. Something responded. And based on our analysis of the signal patterns, that something is now moving toward us. Victor watched the implications spread through the assembly like ripples in still water. "How long?" Morthic asked quietly. "At their current rate of approach, approximately 300 years. What are they? We do not know. The architects warned us that we are not the only ancient power watching this galaxy. They implied that whatever is coming has consumed entire civilizations before, entire galaxies." Victor moved to the center of his platform, facing the assembled representatives directly. "High Chancellor Morthic, the Dominion has controlled this galaxy for 12,000 years. You have maintained order through the gates, through military force, through the careful balance of power. It has worked, but it cannot work forever." He spread his arms, encompassing the vast chamber. "Something is coming that we cannot imagine. Something that has destroyed powers greater than the Dominion. We can spend the next 300 years fighting each other, competing for scraps of territory, maintaining ancient grudges. Or we can spend those years becoming something stronger, something united, something capable of facing whatever emerges from that darkness." Counselor Thesara's crystalline form chimed with what might have been agreement. "You are proposing that we transform the Dominion from an empire into an alliance. I am proposing that we save everyone, not because humanity demands it, not because we threaten you, but because we will need every ship, every scientist, every warrior working together if we want any chance of survival." The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, High Chancellor Morthic spoke. "The Dominion will vote. All species will be heard. Ambassador Nash, your delegation may wait in the diplomatic quarters until a decision is reached." Victor nodded. "Thank you, High Chancellor." As he turned to leave, Morthic's telepathic voice touched his mind one final time. "Ambassador, whatever the outcome of this vote, I want you to know something. In 12,000 years, I have witnessed 100 species rise and fall. I have never seen one face annihilation with such courage, or offer mercy so freely to enemies who sought their destruction. Your species is young. Perhaps it is exactly what this galaxy needs." Victor paused at the doors. "We do what we can, High Chancellor. We always have." The obsidian doors closed behind him. 1,000 species began the debate that would shape the future. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, something ancient and terrible adjusted its course toward the small spiral galaxy. That had just made itself interesting that the countdown had begun. 300 years had transformed the galaxy beyond recognition. Admiral Maria Nash stood on the command deck of the greatest vessel ever constructed, watching the edge of known space through screens that showed readings no previous generation could have imagined. The ship was named Unity, and it stretched nearly 100 kilometers from bow to stern. Around it, forming a defensive sphere that covered light years of space, floated 15 million warships from 412 different species. Maria was the direct descendant of Victor Nash, the ambassador who had declared war on the Dominion 3 centuries ago. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Everyone in the galaxy had. "Status report," she commanded. "All formations in position," replied Commander Thesara VII, the crystalline being who served as her second in command. The Thesara lineage had worked alongside the Nash family for generations. The horizon barrier is holding. The approaching entities will make contact in approximately 4 hours. Maria stared at the void between galaxies. Something was coming. Something that had crossed 3 million light-years of empty space. Something that had, according to the fragments of architect knowledge they had pieced together, consumed over 10,000 galaxies across billions of years. The Devourers had many names in many dead civilizations. They were entropy given form. They were the end of all things. They had never been defeated, Dot, until now. That had never mattered. "Open a channel to the fleet," Maria ordered. Her voice carried across 15 million ships, reaching beings of every shape and origin the galaxy contained. "This is Admiral Nash. In 4 hours, we will face something that has existed since before the first stars formed. Something that has never known failure. Something that believes we are already dead, just too foolish to realize it." She paused, letting her words settle into the silence. 300 years ago, my ancestor stood before the Galactic Dominion and declared war. He was terrified. Humanity had nothing but courage and a technology we barely understood. But he declared war anyway, because the alternative was surrender. And surrendering was not something humanity knew how to do. Through the viewport, the first of the Devourers became visible. They were not ships. They were not beings. They were wrongness given form, shapes that existed outside normal reality, geometries that the mind refused to process. They radiated hunger that could be felt across light years. Since that day, we have built something unprecedented. Not an empire, not a dominion, an alliance. Species that fought for millennia now stand together. Enemies became partners. Strangers became family. We did this because we believed that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that unity was more powerful than fear. The Devourers were approaching the horizon barrier now. 15 million ships held their breath. Today, we find out if we were right. The battle began. The Devourers struck the barrier with force that shattered stars. Reality itself screamed as impossible energies collided with the defensive perimeter that protected the galactic core. Ships trembled, sensors overloaded. Beings across 100,000 worlds felt the impact in their souls. A barrier bent. It twisted. It cracked in 100 places. It held. "All ships engage," Maria commanded. 15 million vessels opened fire simultaneously. Weapons developed across 3 centuries poured destruction toward the approaching entities. Modified horizon technology tore at their impossible forms. Energy beams calculated by the combined mathematics of 400 species struck targets that had never been harmed before. The Devourers felt something they had not experienced in billions of years. Pain, but they were not defeated. They pushed harder, seeking weaknesses, learning, adapting. For every wound they suffered, they inflicted 10 in return. Ships died by the thousands. Entire formations disappeared in moments of impossible destruction. "Admiral," Commander Thisara reported, her crystalline voice cracking with strain, "we are losing ships faster than projected. The barrier cannot hold indefinitely." "Then we hold it ourselves." Maria turned to her communications officer. "Get me Ambassador Nash." A holographic image appeared beside her. Ambassador Victor Nash IV, great-great-grandson of the original, served as humanity's voice to the galaxy. He was already coordinating with representatives from dozens of species. "The barrier will fail within the hour," Maria reported. "We need another option." "I know." Victor's face was pale but determined. "The architects left us something. A final gift buried in the data they gave us 300 years ago. Our scientists have finally decoded it. What is it? They called it the Synthesis Protocol. It was never meant to be a weapon. It was meant to be a transformation. Maria felt ice in her stomach. Transformation of what? The Devourers are not natural beings. They were created billions of years ago by a civilization that no longer exists. They were designed to consume, to destroy, to end. But that design can be changed. The synthesis protocol can rewrite their fundamental nature. You want to cure them? I want to give them a choice. Victor's image flickered as another devourer struck the barrier nearby. They have never known anything but hunger. They have consumed 10,000 galaxies because consumption is all they understand. But what if we showed them something different? What if we offered them the possibility of existence without destruction? That is the greatest gamble in the history of the universe. Victor smiled, and for a moment, he looked exactly like his ancestor 300 years ago. Humanity has always been good at gambling. We gamble on hope. We always have. Maria made her decision. All ships fall back to secondary positions. Maintain the barrier, but cease offensive operations. She turned to her first officer. Prepare the synthesis protocol for deployment. I will deliver it personally. Her shuttle launched into the chaos, a single point of light against the darkness. The devourers noticed it immediately. They turned their impossible attention toward this tiny vessel approaching the breach in reality. Maria opened a communication channel, broadcasting on frequencies that transcended normal space. I am Maria Nash. I represent the united civilizations of this galaxy. I am not here to destroy you. I am here to offer you something no one has ever offered before. The devourers paused. Something unexpected was happening. You have consumed 10,000 galaxies because you were made to consume. But you were not always this way. Once, before your creators twisted your nature, you were something else. Something that could create as well as destroy. Something that could know peace as well as hunger. She activated the synthesis protocol. Light blazed from her shuttle. Light that carried not destruction, but possibility. It touched the nearest devourer and offered a choice. Remain what it was. Or remember what it could have been. The devourer hesitated. Then, slowly, impossibly, it changed. Its impossible geometry softened. Its endless hunger faded. Something emerged that had not existed for billions of years. A being capable of wonder instead of consumption. Joy instead of destruction. The other devourers watched. Some fled back into the void between galaxies. Some attacked with renewed fury. But many chose as the first had chosen. They accepted the gift. They remembered who they had been before their nature was corrupted. The battle ended not through destruction, but through transformation. Admiral Maria Nash's shuttle drifted through space, its pilot exhausted but alive. Around her, the remaining devourers were changing one by one, discovering forms of existence they had forgotten existed. On 15 million ships from 412 species, beings of every shape celebrated. 3 centuries of preparation had ended not in annihilation, but in a new beginning, and somewhere in the vast archives of the Unity. A message from 300 years past waited to be remembered. Victor Nash's voice, recorded on the day humanity had declared war. We do not know what the future holds. We do not know if we will survive what is coming. But we know this. Hope is stronger than fear. Unity is stronger than destruction. And humanity will never stop reaching for tomorrow, no matter what stands in our way. His words echoed across centuries, a reminder of what one young species had taught an entire galaxy, that sometimes declaring war was the first step toward lasting peace, and that the impossible was merely the untried.